All right, we're back. We got some more great topics. We'll start off with the PGA Tour Championship, Brett Snedeker, and what an amazing performance by him. Of course, he had a lot going on in his mind. His father came down, of course, had liver issues. I believe it was his swing coach. His son was in an accident, went to go visit him the day before to kind of give him a little bit of a motivation. You had Rory McIlroy, you had Tiger Woods, all separated by 4 strokes going to that final end, but Snedeker with 3 birdies, especially that one on 17. How do you rate his performance there?
Oh, I mean, he did everything he had to do. He was the only guy in the top 10, I think, who actually went under par in the final round. He's a guy who's been shaky before in his career. I don't know how he got it together with $10 million on the line, but he did it. He bounced back from a terrible double bogey early in the round, too. It was great.
You know, we always sit back in golf, and we were talking about golf before in the show, and that we're always waiting for somebody to come to the forefront. You know, is this going to be Rory's turn, that he's going to take over and be the big power in golf, or is Woods going to bounce back? Again, it's hard because there's always some players out there that will come up on a given weekend and be the player to beat that weekend, and he was the player to beat this past weekend.
So was it his to win, or was it like Rory's and them to lose, because they did struggle towards the end there?
Well, at the same point, I think, you know, you do talk about Rory and Tiger, and they were in the hunt. You figure they should have made a move on Sunday. Tiger hasn't been able to do it all year long. Rory collapsed like the old Rory, but Snedeker, I mean, he won that. No one lost it. He won it.
All right. Well, you know what? Let's move on to the CFL. Head coach Corey Chamberlain, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, guaranteed John Cornish wouldn't rush over 100 yards, although he did have a full moon to show the Rider fans afterwards. We'll get to that in a moment. But he said that if his defense allowed 100 yards or more, that someone would be released. Sure enough, 67 yards is what Cornish gained. But to you guys, do you feel that this is a desperation move by head coach Corey Chamberlain? Because, you know, the team started off so well, then they struggled, losing 5 in a row. Just something to motivate them? Do you use that as a ploy, or do you think it was at the right time?
It was a bit of both. I think it was a ploy, it was motivation. It did work. I think more than anything, I think he was sending a message to the players that your jobs aren't safe. And we can't be content in where we are right now, and we need to come up with a big win, and they did. Now, can they take this and have a big one against BC too? That's going to be the motivation now.
It's a tricky game he was playing, because he probably has said stuff like that in the dressing room before, but never come out in the media and said it. And you can only use that card once. You can't keep doing that all year long. And so if that blows up in your face, you're in trouble, I think.
You got away with it. And I guess you raise an interesting point, Emmett, because he knows that locker room. He knows those players. So if it was an extra boost, then so be it. But wouldn't you be afraid a little bit as a coach if you were in that position? Because you don't want to always do that. You don't want to keep motivating your players like that. They should be motivated themselves to a certain extent, right?
Well, you know what? In junior hockey, sometimes there's been coaches that have 2 bus tickets sitting on the table in the dressing room. Whoever has the worst game of all your players, there's those 2 bus tickets that are waiting for you. You know, and it is motivation. And for Chamberlain, it's interesting to see how the players will respond if he comes out and does something like this again.
Yeah, well, it should be interesting. But let's go. Let's move on to John Cornish. Very interesting to what happened. He's been a guy who's very, I won't say outgoing, but a guy who's definitely one that will call out a player if he didn't like him. Got a little frustrated with the fans in Regina and decided to moon them. Got fined by both the CFL and the Stampeders. Do you think there should have been a little bit more suspension for a guy like this? Or is that
That's funny. I don't care. Let the guy play. Who's really, really upset about that? He's a villain now. I mean, it's just a character in the CFL now. And
when they go back there, wow, if he thought he got it bad on Sunday, next time Mr. Cornish goes back, I've sat on the east side of Taylor Field or
Sunny side, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it gets a little crude. It gets a little nasty at times. I know I've been there for the Eskimos when they were there when Machocha was coaching, and let's just say they had a lot of fun with the Eskimos that day.
Well, it's certainly interesting in that point. So you guys agree that it was just more so fun and games. We haven't really seen that from the Calgary Stampeders. We used to see that a few years ago with the rivalry with Saskatchewan. You had Henry Burris, of course, in there. You had Joffrey Reynolds, guys who were antagonists in Regina. Is Cornish the new guy now?
I think so. I think, you know, he got called out by Chamberlain that we wanted to stop this guy. He's their best player. Now he's trying to piss off the fans. It's good stuff. That's what you want in the CFL.
Yeah, and he looked frustrated all game long. You know, had a run-in with a referee that one time where the referee got in his way, kind of threw the ball at him, thought he was going to get a penalty out of that, didn't. Yeah, he was a frustrated guy and kind of took it out in the crowd. I know he said it was equipment adjustment. You usually don't drop your pants down to your ankles for equipment adjustment in front of 30,000 people.
Unless you have a purpose for doing so.
Yes.
But I guess in this case, the punishment fits the crime and he's just fine. So, all right, let's move on to the NFL and Greg Schiano. Schiano is an interesting guy, that's to say the least. A guy who used to coach in the NCAA. And in the NCAA, especially when it comes to kneel downs, they'll sometimes rush the quarterback. Reason being, of course, you never know. Might fumble, might get the ball back, another opportunity to score. However, his peers in the NFL don't seem too happy about it. Of course, Tom Coughlin and the New York Giants were not happy when they bum rushed Eli Manning. And then the same thing last Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys when you saw Tony Romo take a few steps back, and then all of a sudden you had Schiano calling timeouts to get his guys saying, "What are you doing?" Hit the guys, and they eventually hit a couple of tackles and made them fall even before the ball was snapped. Your thoughts on this? Is it going to cost his team, and by him I'm talking about Greg Schiano, is it going to cost his team further down the line? Maybe a player is going to get hurt or what have you.
I don't know if his team's buying into it.
No.
If he's got to call a timeout to make sure his players hit the other guys, what are you doing with your team? I mean, I guess there's some sort of code there. Don't do it. And he's breaking it amongst his own players. I don't think you want to play for a coach like that.
Yeah, there's a code. If one of his players gets hurt or one of the other team's players gets hurt, you know, that looks bad on the NFL, looks bad on Tampa Bay. And you can see his Tampa Bay players wondering, what the heck am I doing? You know, the game's over. All I have to do is take 2 steps towards the ball and, you know, walk to the sidelines and get off the field. And he's making it more than what it is. He's saying that they have to play until the final buzzer. Well,
Well, and then on top of that, too, his best players are going to be targeted by the other teams. You think anyone's going to show his team sympathy anymore?
Yeah,
His receivers better watch
And
out.
it's going to be a risk. There's going to be a lot of
It goes
plays,
both ways, right? It
especially
goes
with
both
those
ways.
NFL referees not calling some of those hits to the head. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with more Gloves Are Off.